The Sil'dihn Subterrane is a first-of-its-kind dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV, and because of it, we have new insight to the history of Ul'dah and the Beast Tribes. Let's take a look at the truths uncovered in a vault locked many years ago. Before we get into the story, let's explain how variant dungeons work. These duties feature branching paths, and by exploring them along with a quest character, you reveal new elements of the overarching story. And each time you complete a new path, you get a new entry into the journal or log associated with that dungeon. You can see all of this in the V&C Dungeon Finder window under the Duty tab. Variant dungeons can also be completed with any party composition. Bring as many or as few friends as you like. To fully understand the story of the Sil'dihn Subterrane, we first need to go back in time to the 6th Astral Era, the time when the Lalafelian heirs of the Mach moved to the wilds of Thanalan. They used their knowledge to start a town, which boomed into the nation of Belladia in 737. It flourished for 200 years until the Sultan of that time became ill. This triggered a fierce struggle between his two sons over who would claim the throne. Each son rallied soldiers loyal to them, and the nation of Belladia was split in half. The Sultan died, but the fighting never stopped. The princes tore the nation apart into two new cities, Sil'dih and Ul'dah. The city-states found reason to fight for centuries. The Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 1 tells us of King Lalawethu, who made the troubles even worse. He instituted flood control to save his nation's economy, drawing waters from the upper reaches of Ul'dah's source. Lalawethu led Sil'dih, and its people proclaimed him the King of Springs. The Ul'dahns, however, saw this as an act worthy of all-out war. In 1177, a drought struck Thanalan and King Lalawethu died from illness. This spurred Ul'dah to action. The following year, the city-state marched to take their water source back. The two armies fought a long and bloody war, and neither side could claim victory. It wasn't until 1181 that the stalemate was finally broken. The powder that would turn corpses into the living dead. Zombies. Ul'dah used their catapults to rain the powder down on Sil'dih. This, combined with the starvation, led to carnage. Sasagan ul-Sisigan, the third of his name and ruler of Ul'dah, spread misinformation about these events. He claimed Sil'dih had turned their own dead into zombies to try and win the war. Sisigan spun a tale of divine crusade and sent his elite forces, the Immortal Flames, into the city. They purged the undead, and Sil'dih fell. Sisigan put the powder under close guard and didn't reveal the truth of what actually happened. Now that changed 40 years later, when Baldr Thorne, a Hyrule noble, learned the truth. He wanted to charge Sisigan for his crimes, so the Lalafell ruler demanded the Hyrule's head, but no one aided him. Baldr was righteous, and the people rallied behind him. Sisigan was imprisoned for the rest of his life. The people wanted Baldr to take over as the Sultan. He initially refused, but came around with some conditions. He wanted to be a steward only, ruling until the city-state was stable. He never made knowledge of the powder public, fearing that it would fall into the wrong hands. Instead, he established the Arbiters of Truth, an organization devoted to preserving the truth of Sil'dih's downfall. The Thorne dynasty ruled for 200 years after that. His heirs eventually stepped down, but there is another event we need to acknowledge before moving on. In 1353, the undead rose once more from the ancient sprawling sewers of Sil'dih. Leadership enlisted aid to deal with the threat this time. The Amalj'aa, Ul'dah's fiercest enemies, pledged to help. Many in the modern era would find this hard to believe, or perhaps forgot about this pivotal moment in history. After all, there's been an edict banning the Beast Tribes for years. So, how did this happen? To answer that, we need to understand the Amalj'aa a little bit more. These hulking beastmen are nomads who inhabit the grasslands of Paglathon. You'll remember we've been there as part of a level 80 dungeon of the same name. The symbol of the Amalj'aa is a stylized flame. The Amalj'aa worship Ifrit and believe Thanalan has been purified by his sacred flame. That's why most of their efforts are to reclaim the Holy Land. putting them at odds with the forces of Ul'dah. The Amalj'aa are led by a council of the 7 war chiefs of the most dominant tribes. The Amalj'aa frequently attack travelers and trade caravans. They hope to gain crystals for summoning rituals and captives for Ifrit to temper, permanently making the captives into loyal servants of the Primal. It's worth mentioning that there is a faction of Amalj'aa that don't blindly worship Ifrit. They are called the Brotherhood of Ash. Now back to the Sil'dihn Subterrane in modern times. You've been hired by the personal assistant of Nanamo Ul-Namo, the Sultana of Ul'dah. Except the assistant isn't the real client. You've been hired by the Sultana herself to go into the tunnels beneath the city. The warrior has been here before, during their escape from the city at the end of the A Realm Reborn story. The crew repairing some tunnels discovered an antique gate sealed shut by some mystical force. It bears an intricate flowery design, the very same design on a key left to Nanamo from her late parents, passed down through a ceremony with promises to take her there when she comes of age. Nanamo wants to explore it, but knows her council will be overprotective, so it's up to the warrior to escort the Sultana to and through that gate. Before you go inside, Nanamo spends time in the palace archives to find documents with even a tangible mention of Sil'dih. The only information she found noteworthy was a story from an Ul'dah soldier who fought alongside the Amalj'aa during the zombie purge. The report talks about the different approach the Amalj'aa had to warfare and how it hindered their cooperation. For example, like the Ul'dah soldiers wanting to focus the weaker members of the zombie hordes to thin their numbers. The Amalj'aa didn't fight that way, and always wanted to slay the mightiest enemies first. They believe fighting lesser foes first would cast doubt on someone's fighting abilities. The Amalj'aa's domain is Zaharak, the main war camp they operate out of. They built it when they came to join in the purging of the undead. This would mean the old fortification inside the Subterrane is a forward operating base. Nanamo speculates this is the irrefutable proof of the alliance with Ul'dah, something her father references in one of his journals. Now, it's unclear if this statement implies that the records of the Alliance weren't for public consumption. The Encyclopedia Eorzea explicitly mentions the two working together, so this line may just be for the sake of everyone who didn't read the book. Either way, Nanamo's father was a strong opponent against the Beast Tribe ban because of the Alliance during the Purge. He wanted evidence, something that the Monetarist backed by the Syndicate couldn't deny. Now, he died before he could achieve that goal. The word accident is in quotations, suggesting his death was orchestrated by his enemies. The Subterrane held a lot of significance to Nanamo's father, and not just for its rich history. Inside lies the beautiful, secluded place he would take Nanamo's mother, a sun-dappled garden where they could enjoy each other's company away from prying eyes. This is the place where he proposed to his beloved. Protecting this place when the warrior explores is a Silky. It was once a creation of Nanamo's mother who adored cleaning. Her servants found it a little improper that a sultana wished to clean her own quarters, so they hid every mop and broom. Nanamo's mother learned the magic to summon the Silky as a way to deal with this trickery. One path of the Subterrane leads to the casket of a zombified Amalj'aa champion. He likely suffered injury during the Purge. Nanamo spoke with the current Amalj'aa war chief during one of their regular council meetings. She wanted to know of their customs in sending his kin soul to the afterlife. The war chief advised her to avoid disturbing the warrior's coffin. He instructed her to face the warrior, bow, offer respects for a life well lived, celebrate their victory, and kneel for a moment of reflection. It's this information that leads you to the secret boss of this dungeon. The warrior and Nanamo discover an entrance to the Sil'dih Royal Palace, remarkably preserved for the time that it's been buried. Historians would find a wealth of things to study as soon as a safe path was secured. They venture further and discover a treasure chamber. But what's even more surprising is someone beat them to it. They find a burglar's note. It references Nashakite, the name that the Ul'dah jewelers gave to the highest quality of malachite from the Copperbell mines. A name she says was borrowed from her mother. A sample of the stone was left behind as well. bearing a remarkable resemblance to her mother's eyes. On the back of that burglar's note are the words Sil'dih Aqueducts, Thorne, Vault, a possible hint at a secret cache of royal family wealth left behind. At the deepest point of these tunnels is a vault. A catalog of evidence is in the center. The words, "For coin, country, and comrades in arms, we bequeath this trust to the House of Ul," a declaration signed by the last Sultan of Thorne. Many other signatures followed, including the name of Nanamo's father. Wedged in between is a note with his handwriting. In it he says he hopes his darling Nanamo is the one to find this message. He explains the purpose of this vault, how it's a place known only to royal heirs. It's an archive of evidence of the alliance with the Amalj'aa. Tradition dictates this be passed on by word of mouth, but her father seemed to know he was being targeted. That's why he wrote the note. This experience fortifies Nanamo's resolve that someday there could be peace between the Amalj'aa and the city of Ul'dah, fulfillment to her father's mission. Nanamo wonders what her parents would think of the choices she's made. She also has a great desire to return to the tunnels for more exploration. And that's the story of the Sil'dihn Subterrane. What's your favorite path to take in this dungeon? Personally, the secret boss is the one I enjoyed the most. Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoy lore-focused videos on Final Fantasy XIV, consider subscribing so you know when the next video goes live. Until then, take care, warriors, and I'll see you next time.